Well, we're coming back at you with another Shields for Ministries topic. Today we were discussing the Stephen McNair tragedy when the young lady, the mistress that he was sleeping with, shot him in his sleep some years ago. It's been almost 10 years ago. And, you know, what was so compelling about this is that we got into a discussion, I'm just going to get right into it, on the line tonight where individuals were kind of saying, well, how do you view this man sleeping with this woman? And not so much he got killed by her, but he's sleeping with this woman, wasn't his wife, and how we men have certain vices or certain issues in our lives that we deal with. And one of them is women. Bottom line, whether we're married, whether we're not, that usually is a point of reference or weakness for a lot of men, is that the choices that we have and the choices that we decide to make in terms of, when we are out there, married or not, and we are tempted in that area of our lives. And so on the call, we finally got to the point where we said, well, for the brethren that have an issue with that, and you talk to a friend, and you want to discuss that issue with a friend, you want that friend to come to you in love. You want him to have, be empathetic with your situation and not be so judgmental, because we don't know when it's going to be us on the next go round. Everybody has something in their lives that they are struggling with, and a lot of times the worst thing we can do is to be in denial of the issues or struggles or strongholds in our lives. Because when you're in denial, there's nothing you can do about changing it. Matter of fact, there's probably no issue that you think, you probably don't have anything you need to change if you're in denial about it. So the fact that we have to be humble enough to recognize our own faults, then we can be gracious enough to go and console somebody else when they have their situations. And I think that's what the whole Shields conference call is about. It's to uplift and hold each other up when we do fall. And I think sometimes because we don't actually lay our vices or our struggles on the line every day, sometimes we kind of say, well, maybe everybody's doing well. The thought process is, if we're not talking about our problems and everybody's doing well, everybody's prosperous, everybody's blessed, saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost, and everything's good. But the reality is you can have all of that and still have issues. And I think that's what we need to get to. So in order for me to feel what you're going through, I've got to have the compassion over you, so in turn, I can learn how to forgive myself for the things I'm going through. And this is what the enemy does. He plays on our guilt. He plays on us feeling so bad about it that we start to remove ourselves from God's grace and his mercy when we mess up. And then we start to listen to other folks who have their judgmental opinions but won't acknowledge the things that they're going through. So the deal is I love how Carlos entered the conversation. He says, well, your relationship with Christ is a personal relationship. It's important that we have a personal relationship, so that because how Jesus is dealing with me, he may not be dealing with the next brother on the line. I may have he may be dealing with me in a whole different arena and way. And then we have to allow room as Christians, as brothers, to allow room for Jesus and the Lord to deal with people how he will choose us to. So we're not putting our opinion, subjective opinion, on the work that Christ may be doing in that person's life. And it's okay. I know years throughout the church has a reputation for being, one, hypocritical, and two, judgmental. And then we're not talking about just the modern church. We're talking about going all the way back to the Sadducees and Pharisees. The church, the religious sect, the leaders in the church have always had this reputation of being hypocritical and judgmental. So what that does is it pushes potential people who are hurting away from what? Away from the opportunity at redemption, at deliverance. And so when we see today's church, I like how Carlos put out a very good thought about that. How he was saying, well, so if someone is listening to the call who is not saved, who probably doesn't go to church, we don't want them to feel like we're pretty much saying, well, there's no, shutting them down. If they're dealing with a circumstance or issue in their life where there's guilt there, and rather than having them feel comfortable and free enough to share, we start to kind of make the environment kind of icy to where they feel like, well, I needed somebody to talk to. I thought this might have been it, and now I won't do it. So back in the biblical days with the Sadducees and the Pharisees, they did the same thing to people. They were shutting people and kicking people out the church. So anytime you see people getting kicked out of the church, the hospital for spiritually sick people, then you know we got a real problem. If somebody is willing to finally get the gall and the nerve to come and acknowledge their faults, the last thing the Lord wants us to do is kick them out because we don't agree with their sin. Okay? That's the last thing we want to do, is get in the way of the Lord's grace and mercy over their life. And key word, over their life. Just because we didn't need, or certain things didn't bother us, and it was a different path and journey to the cross for us, doesn't mean someone has to go on the same journey to the cross for them. And how we reel that back into, when we look at a brother like Steve McNair, he didn't make it out of his sin. I mean, that's a story of itself. We can talk about the fact that he got shot in his sleep, and we don't know if he was able to ask for forgiveness. We don't know if he was, what his relationship with Christ was at that point, but he got taken over in a sin and never was able to make a comeback. Thank God for the grace and mercy that you, Lord, you give us, that some of us can make a comeback. We don't, so we have an opportunity to come out of different situations that we find ourselves in. I think that's a blessing, but the most important thing I got from the call is we have to be very careful how we take our subjective opinions or what we feel is right or wrong and make that, a black and white statement for everybody. And when it comes to morals, I will say there is right and wrong. But I also want to say when it comes to how Jesus works in people's lives, it does not have to be the same. Everybody's journey and path to the cross doesn't have to be the same. The stripper, the prostitute, the pimp, the hustler, the mailman, the lawyer, the drug addict, the alcoholic, whatever, may have all different ways to get to the cross. And what I mean by that, I mean there's one way to God, that's Jesus, but I mean how they get to salvation. The day that they finally come and ask Jesus to come into their life may be different from ours. Some of us grew up in the church our whole lives. So you got people that never gone to church, never read a Bible. So their journey is going to be a lot different from ours to get to salvation. But we just thank God for the grace and mercy and for the blood that was shed so that all have the opportunity at eternal life. Not just some, all have. No matter what you've done, no matter where you find yourself in life, every human being that's breathing has an opportunity at salvation. And I think that should be the story that we should stay on. And I think that should be the topic. Everybody has an opportunity that is breathing. And we thank God again for this opportunity with Shields Ministries, that we can come together, we can share. One of our last topics, I didn't get a chance to do a recap on the last one, but it was about some of the things that were going on in Baltimore, the looting, the rioting. And I think I made a statement that said each individual, we were talking about the civil rights leaders and the movement and how things have changed recently. We don't have a galvanized leadership. We're kind of fragmented as a people. But each individual has an obligation to be the next Martin Luther King or Malcolm X. To bring that greatness out of us as individuals is how we hold ourselves accountable. And then I can make a difference if I'm at least holding myself accountable. And then hopefully that will make its mark. I know, we do want to come together in numbers. I'm never discounting that. But as an individual, I do have to hold myself accountable. I do have to play my part. And when I say play my part, I want to be a part of the solutions, not a part of the problem. And sometimes, a lot of times, you have individuals who will just follow the crowd, but the wrong crowd. When you see those people going out looting and tearing up their cities and neighborhoods, they're following the wrong crowd. And a lot of times, I say this, I'll say it again, that's an opportunity to vent their own frustrations and problems and issues they have in their own life. That may not have nothing to do with Rodney King or Trayvon Martin or any of the things going on in Baltimore. I just needed an outlet. And now that I have this outlet to go do this, that, and the third, I got to take out on my family. Or worse being myself. So we got to be very careful. And when we know the difference between I'm part of the movement and I'm actually trying to deal with my own psychological and emotional issues. Again, I thank God for this Shields ministry. I thank God for this recap. I ask you guys to continue to pray for me as I continue to get stronger. The Lord continues to take me to higher heights in Him. Bless me to be a blessing to others. I thank Carlos. I thank the brothers, all of them on the call. Corey, Jeff, Rome, all of you guys on the call. I appreciate you guys, and you continue to pray for me as I pray for you.